Hey there everybody, welcome to Loco Profiling episode 26. And I hope you're not getting a little bit tired of seeing Pacifics on this channel, because I did kind of have plans to make 2025 the year of the Pacifics on my channel. So barring the T1 special that I did, every other episode of Loco Profiling that's uploaded this year will be about a Pacific type locomotive. Episode 22, we had Clan Line. Episode 23, we had Taw Valley. Episode 24, we had Spitfire, all of them being bullied Pacifics. And then in episode 25, which was the Halloween special I did, we had Grand Trunk Western 5629, once again, a Pacific. So now we've reached episode 26, but I'm going back to the British Pacifics on this one. If we can even call it as such in this case. I mean, I guess we can, but the thing is, this is a fairly special Pacific. What we're going to be talking about today is a steam engine that was called the Turbomotive. Oh yes, this episode is on London, Midland and Scottish, number 6202. So let's get on with it already. In 1933, the London, Midland and Scottish Railway introduced a couple of Pacific locomotives, designated as Princess Royals. Built that same year at the former LNWR Locomotive Works in Crewe, the new engines, 6200 Princess Royal and 6201 Princess Elizabeth, would serve as test beds to see if this new class was viable for mass production. They had 250 psi of boiler pressure, a foursome of 16.25 by 28-inch cylinders, and 78-inch driving wheels, resulting in a tractive effort of 40,286 pounds. And sure enough, 10 production locomotives were built in 1935 at the same factory, but oddly enough, they were numbered 6203 through 6212, leaving a gap in the numbering sequence. This gap was filled by a third, far more unique prototype locomotive built that same year. Locomotive 6202, better known by its nickname, the Turbomotive, was a steam turbine locomotive based on the Princess Royal design. So instead of cylinders and pistons to power the driving wheels, the engine had a steam turbine. She was an example of a so-called direct drive steam turbine, where the turbine powered the wheels pretty much directly, albeit through a series of reduction gears. The turbine was supplied by Metropolitan Vickers and allowed the engine to produce 2,400 horsepower, but obviously no real tractive effort. And I'm not even gonna try to dive deeper into steam turbines, at least for now. Plus, while horsepower is all well and good for sustaining speed, the actual pulling power is measured in the tractive effort, the amount of pounds that each driving axle, or possibly even each individual driving wheel, would exert onto the track. But whatever. As for a service career, 6202 was usually allocated to Camden, and was usually sent to hauling passenger trains between London and Liverpool. The Turbomotive would head north, so from London Euston to Liverpool, at 8:30 a.m, and then she'd depart south, back to London at 5:25 p.m. on the same day. Doing this specific job 6 days a week, she could rack up 2,300 miles of running. In fact, despite being a one-off experiment, she was actually pretty successful, racking up 128,000 miles in only 18 months. Though, naturally, she did have her problems. The first problem being the inherent nature of steam turbine locomotives. They worked very well and were exceptionally efficient at higher speeds, but at lower speeds they consumed more steam than the average overweight American could consume hamburgers. Bit too far? Okay, bit too far, I'm sorry. But still, at lower speeds, turbine engines were exceptionally inefficient. And then there was the separate turbine for running backwards, which was much smaller and only had 4 blades, compared to the main turbine for forward running having 18 blades. So when going backwards, she barely had the strength of a Terrier locomotive from the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway. And she was incapable of moving empty stock uphill out of Euston Station. She was also quite bad at throwing smoke clear of the cab, so special deflectors had to be used, I mean, personally speaking, I don't think they look all that bad on the engine, to be brutally honest. But the biggest problem with this engine was infrastructure, or rather, the lack thereof. Due to being a one-off experiment, 6202 was a maintenance nightmare. She was already more expensive to build compared to the other conventional Princess Royal Pacifics, but the bigger kick in the balls was the lack of spare parts available. Even if she didn't need major repairs that often, whenever she did need them, they were always very expensive and time-consuming, mainly because of long manufacturing and delivery times on spare parts for her turbine. And after a turbine failure in 1949, by which point the LMS had already been merged and nationalized with the LNER, GWR, and Southern to form British Railways, the Turbomotive, now renumbered 46202, was put into storage, awaiting rebuild into a more conventional steam locomotive. She emerged in rebuilt form in 1952, but when she did, she wasn't rebuilt to the same specs as the other Princess Royals. The main difference was the cylinders, which had a slightly bigger diameter of 16.5 inches. In turn, this allowed her to develop a noticeably higher tractive effort of 41,536 pounds. And the reason for these bigger cylinders? They were the same design used on the other, even more imposing class of LMS Pacifics that were effectively spawned by the Princess Royals, the Princess Coronations, of which 38 engines were built between 1937 and 48, theoretically numbered 6220 through 6257. I say theoretically because the last one was sadly made in BR days. In rebuilt form, 6202 was also given a new official name, Princess Anne. This was because the day of her emergence from the rebuild was August 15th of 1952, the day after Princess Anne's second birthday. But sadly, there were two tragedies for 6202 in this new form. One being small and subjective, and the other being big and catastrophic. The small and subjective tragedy was the fact that she was repainted in British Railways Brunswick Green, which I hate seeing on any steam engine of LMS design or origin, even if the individual engine in question was built or rebuilt to its current spec in BR days. And the big and catastrophic tragedy was the fact that she only lasted a little under 2 months in service in rebuilt form, because on October 8th of 1952, 6202 became one of 3 locomotives to be completely destroyed in the infamous Harold and Wealdstone rail crash, the second worst train accident in British history, with 112 people killed and a further 340 people injured, the other engines reportedly being fellow LMS locomotives. The main aftermath is that since the construction of 6202, no more steam turbine engines were built in the United Kingdom, and instead, the basics of the steam locomotive remained pretty much the same since the days of Stephenson's rocket. Friendly reminder, even the bullied Pacifics on the Southern were about to be rebuilt from semi-experimental spam cans into more conventional locomotives. And as for 6202, she was officially written off on May 22nd of 1954 and sent away for scrapping, and the gap that she left behind in BR's fleet of express engines would later be filled up with a different one-of-a-kind Pacific. BR's very own Standard Class 8 Pacific, number 71,000, Duke of Gloucester.